Everything is muted. Just one of those days.
There we
All right,
go.
third time's a charm. I'm wondering if you could let people know on Slack that we're starting now,
Me? I'm
or
currently
anyone
on
really. I just unfortunately I'm not logged into Slack at the moment, and we
Oh.
have to figure that out.
yeah, hang on a second.
Yeah, give me a second to
Okay,
set
I've
up.
written in Slack.
Thanks, mate.
Oh, thank you. Perfect.
Look with me. Fourth.
I have an open, but I don't have the meeting notes up.
No worries.
So, yeah.
Hang on, Joseph, you're on the wrong notes. I'm just setting them up now.
Lord. It's wonderful when you wake up with them in the morning with a slight headache. And you're like, oh, I hope this doesn't get any worse as the day goes on.
Yeah. I got a slight headache today as well, unfortunately. Shopify laid off 20% of the company, and guess who got included?
Oh, you're in?
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
I think
shit.
let's not talk about it here. This is off topic here, but I guess that's one
So
way to let people know.
I'm sorry to hear about that. That sucks.
Yeah, Thursdays. They're basically, silver medal Fridays, really.
Good Lord. So that's how they welcomed you this morning. Is congratulations, you can't log into your anything. Here's a personal email telling you you're gone.
Well, I can't log into some things. I was able to get into email and calendar. And
Is this why you can't get into your OpenSSS Slack account?
Well, that's what I'm going to figure out after this call.
Oh.
Is what's the situation with various accounts?
I'm sorry.
And I got to try to work out who to notify that I'm changing email addresses and so on.
Yeah, I mentioned this kick to heel. I thought that it would be appropriate for the OpenSSS Slack to suggest that when people are creating their accounts, they use their personal emails instead of their work emails. We currently recommend using their work emails, and the Google layoff really put a point on the maybe that's a bad idea, given that people want to transfer their identities between companies eventually, or just they want to stay involved.
Yeah, we'll see.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I should add myself to the list, shouldn't I? I don't know if Dustin is coming this morning.
Typically doesn't in the EMEA meetings.
Okay. All right. In that case, I guess somebody's marked me as chair. So that sounds good. We don't have any items on the agenda. Were there any topics that people wanted to discuss particularly this morning that are not related to industry movements?
Yeah. I did want to talk about something. So I spoke to Alpha Omega.
Can you, sorry, we're having trouble hearing you. I don't know why.
I tried to get my headphones fixed yesterday and it didn't. Just keep it on. How's that? Any better? Can you hear me?
That's a lot clearer. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what were you saying?
1 second. Gotta put you on speaker. Okay, perfect. So I spoke to Alpha Omega leadership, people that are actually funding the project and voting on things. And there is, I posited this thing that I've been positing to this group for quite a while, which is that any sufficiently large enough artifact server in the industry that has been provided for free and has not ever been a part of a purchasing agreement from a company has probably never been audited. Like there's never been a pen test performed against it. And my proposal to Alpha Omega was, hey, would we consider like currently the audits that Alpha Omega are performing, right? So Alpha is the targeted, paid for audits of critical software, and then Omega is the long tail of open source. Would it be a valid Alpha engagement to consider performing audits of major artifact servers that have never had a pen test performed against them? And it was not like an immediate yes, but it was more like, I mean, that seems like it's in scope, so we would be happy to review a proposal for such a request for money or a grant or whatever the Alpha Omega. You know, you'd think that because I work for them, I should know what what the full process is, but I truly do not. So I don't know if I have the time currently to dedicate to completely writing up a proposal, but I'm more than happy to be part of the process and helping out with writing a proposal for, hey, Alpha Omega, here's a bunch of like artifact servers in the industry that could use a pen test audit, that are like, you know, maybe like pip or, you know, any industry artifact server that is used to supply the industry supply chains. And then maybe include in that scope the build tools, maybe, I'm not certain, but like, you know, how do these all these systems interplay, and then trying to hire a company to perform, you know, audits of these tools and infrastructure, and then, you know, disclose the vulnerabilities to the maintainers and try to get them fixed. You know, so all that whole sphere of now this is further complicated because you're you know, most of the time when you're engaging in a pen test, right, you're a company coming to a security firm and you're saying, hey, we would like you to pen test us. And then there's a bunch of legal documents that get drafted up that basically like state what a scope is and like, you know, what is allowed to be audited, what is not allowed to be audited. And you know, it's going to be very hard for us to try to do this with an organization that like doesn't have a public vulnerability disclosure policy with a scope document predefined, right? If because you can't authorize hacking against a system or an infrastructure that you don't own, and like, you know, the open stuff can't do that. So there would have to be some sort of level of engagement with these servers hosts to say, hey, we are going to do this, we're going to pay for it, but we need you to give us permission to do so, and do so in a way that the company that we're employing to do that work is comfortable with.
Yeah,
So,
I saw a suggestion from Joshua that we should definitely go through OSTIF, and I agree. They've got a lot of experience in engaging with open source projects, so they probably had experience with that scenario of the projects not yet being set up.
OSTIF, sorry, remind me what OSTIF is.
Open Source Technology Improvement Fund, if I remember correctly.
That's correct,
That's his name escapes me just at the second. EMEA, thank you. Yes, EMEA runs that.
Yeah, they do all of the CNCF security assessments and audits and things, and they basically have a network of security companies that they work with and have like pre-selected because of familiarity with open source and the like differences in doing security work in this environment as opposed to like a traditional commercial environment.
Cool. That's really good. Okay, so I will ping Amir. I guess, does anybody else? My schedule is packed with currently with mentee. Alpha Omega is currently trying to find mentees. And my schedule is currently packed with interviews, but I could spend some time working with someone to like start this document. Does anybody have time and free time and interest in engaging on trying to get such a proposal for money or, you know, resources out of Alpha Omega to make this happen?
Under normal circumstances, I would say yes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Come on,
little distracted.
Don't you have infinite free time now?
Well, no, my new job is finding a new job.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah. So, is there anybody else here? Nobody. You don't have to jump at once.
We could also send an email to the list about it. Like write it if you get a chance. Write a short couple of blurbs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do people think this is a valuable proposition for us to tackle as a part of this working group?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great idea. And another suggestion from Joshua is that we could start with a GitHub issue and link to that from Slack and email.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a great way to establish a paper trail. I think it's a great idea. I think we'll probably find things. I think everybody's done their best, but it's always good to have an external set of eyes.
I mean, yeah. Here's my experience when I just some background. Like I found a security vulnerability several years ago before I worked for Gradle accidentally, and then I was like, "Huh, I wonder what other vulnerabilities exist against the Gradle plugin portal." And some of the stuff that you find is like cross-site request forgery and stuff like that at the very beginning. And you're like, these are like very simple security vulnerabilities against a major component in the supply chain, right? And it's like, you know, and I presume that because these systems are built by people that are just, you know, trying to get something together sometimes, and, you know, they will handle reports that come in, they're still, you know, they're still only as good as the people that have actually looked at them can report them to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have any more on this topic for the moment? No. Okay. We'll move on to Cheng.
Yeah, just this is mostly announcement. Packaging cons dates have been set. It's going to be the 26th to 28th of October in Berlin. And I need to get the PR in after this meeting, and the CFP should be out by Monday.
Cool. It's really exciting.
Yeah.
I had been thinking about coming. I don't know if I will at this point. I'm sorry to be Debbie Downer today. I'll try to keep us moving.
Yeah. We're also considering a virtual option depending on whether we can get the hybrid option.
Yeah, that would be great. A lot of folks, you know, it can be difficult to, under normal circumstances, to justify travel. And of course, a lot of travel budgets have been pulled in this year at a lot of places. So I think a virtual option is a great idea to help broaden the base.
Definitely. I mean, we just did another round of like PyCon this year. Was the show floor, the expo hall was noticeably emptier.
Yeah, I kind of noticed that too, looking at the RailsConf photo. They didn't go to RailsConf this year, but looking at the photos, it's like, yeah, the booths are a bit lighter than they have been in the past.
Yeah.
C'est la vie.
Yep. That's basically all I had to say about it.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any other business that folks wanted to raise today? We're pretty light on the agenda. Joseph?
Hello everyone. I can share also some news on the RubyGem side. We are working on OIDC ability to push the gem. We have testing environment with successful test for now. So I think NPM already has this ability, right? If I remember well. So we hope we are going to join this train soon as well. So in short, from GitHub Action using OIDC, it's possible to acquire a short-living key for push during the action workflow runtime. So there's no need for any OTP since that's mostly manual workflow, but also at the same time, there's no need to lower your security on the account by disabling this. So it's working totally with IDC things. And I think, if I remember well, it's written currently the implementation. It's not GitHub related, GitHub Actions related. So it's really open for another providers to be able to push gems using OIDC connections.
Yeah, it's a fair way along from what I've seen. I've gone over it a bit. It's exciting. It is good news. I'm like, that was one of the big things that was on our roadmap in the Ruby dependency security team, was like, we wanted to help get OIDC across the line. So it's great it's getting done, and we can just kick back and relax. Randall, did you have something you wanted to bring up?
And sorry, just one additional note. Go, Randall.
No, I originally unmuted to say that it was a good idea to +1 year what you had said, Jock, but I'm good.
Joseph?
I was about to say as well, we plan to prepare some infrastructure for simple onboarding, smooth onboarding. And so I think for now, we do plan to maintain official Ruby gems publishing action. So anyone can just send it to the workflow and push with almost no setup, only just registering the stuff. So that's our current plan.
That's really cool. Yeah, I'm really excited about that one. Like the work we did on MFA made a big difference, I think, in terms of folks working at the CLI and working in the GUI. So it was nice that we've also done big work on making automation a first-class citizen. And it's been exciting seeing that happening with NPM and PyPI as well. I think that's going to make a big difference in the long run, having these capabilities.
So I was actually interested in hearing from one of the implementers of, like, how is the how are changes in these trusted publishing states handled? Is this like, if you say that this OIDC identity is now like a trusted publisher, how do you change that? Is it just logging into a web UI or something else?
I'm not the best person to ask, since I'm not the one who implemented this feature.
If I can give my impression of it, because I went through it a week or two ago, it's set up to be a very flexible system. I might have done it differently, but it's a very flexible system, which leaves to the user a lot of discretion about how they configure it. So they can configure that the issuer is GitHub, and presumably, as support comes online for GitLab and the like, you would add GitLab as an issuer or example.com as an issuer, and that would be left to the user. So I'm guessing there'll be some need for documentation to help walk people through that.
I think for now, in the current state, there's no UI around. So
Right.
we did just some manual run with configuring all the entities needed on the RubyGem site manually. But definitely there will be UI and API around this to make users able to control and add, delete providers how they would like to.
But it has, in a sense. So yeah, most of the implementation in terms of user interface is focused on the admin user interface at the moment, the UI that folks like Joseph use. But it has at least been reached a proof of concept stage where Samuel Giddens, who's doing the work, is able to do this in an environment, basically have a build on GitHub, issue a token, and make a push to this environment. So it all wires together, it all wires together successfully. I still think there's work to go, and definitely it would be along with the MFA work that we've done, a great subject for something like what Jonathan is proposing. But yeah, I'm excited that it's happening, basically. Okay, if we're done with that one, is there any other business that folks had to discuss this morning? I see a lot of silent faces going once, going twice.
We have
As
a
usual.
we have a-
Hey, there we go.
yeah. Me and my chatty self. Have we okay, couple questions. Have the survey results from all the repositories, did that ever get turned into anything like a blog post or anything like that? Or is it
Yes.
just kind of what?
Yes. There was a blog post on the OpenSSF blog about it and a report. So there was some stuff produced from it.
Perfect. Great. Awesome. I will take a date. If anybody wants to post the links to that in the Slack channel, that would make my day. I will take a look at those later. Jacques, not you. Per previous.
Yeah,
conversation.
I just need to check out whether I can get into the Slack channel first before I decide what I'm doing.
Yeah. Also email Kihil because our operations, they may be able to assist you. I don't know if they can, but yeah. And then what was the other question? So I know that NPM implemented the 2FA requirement. Has anybody else done that, or is it just NPM that's the big one? Or
I'm sorry, the what requirement?
So for publishing, you have to have two-factor authentication. Has any other artifact servers gone and has anybody besides NPM made that a requirement?
Yes, RubyGems and PyPI both added requirements. So for RubyGems, it's based on the number of downloads. If I remember correctly, the threshold is 180 million lifetime downloads. And for PyPI, it was based on, I think, essentially a sort of like a criticality score type thing where they base it on the number of dependents and your package would be marked as being critical. And I think PyPI had the hardest time because they swept up about 3,000 packages, which caused.
NPM did it required it for everybody, so that I can't
Did they?
imagine.
The last I checked, they'd only done a cohort, so it's good that they've rolled it out to everybody.
I thought it was everybody, but okay. Well, here I thought. I know that what did they for GitHub they required they added support.
Yeah, GitHub's doing 2FA, which de facto will make NPM 2FA as well and Cargo.
Well, how can you log into NPM with a non-GitHub account because NPM predates GitHub?
You know what? I'm not sure. I don't know. For some reason, I'd had it in my head that NPM was predicated on GitHub, but maybe that's not the case. You're right. It does predate the acquisition.
Yeah. I wouldn't make the assumption that all the login has been moved over. I don't know if you all, I mean, gamers among us, there has been a lot of people being not thrilled with Microsoft requiring that you have a Microsoft login account for your Minecraft account because Mojang for a long time had their own independent account system. So I those transitions are always slightly painful.
Yes.
But actually, that reminds me, we can on RubyGem side, there was initial effort. It's currently, I think, enforced for some thresholds, 180 million or something gems. And I think the idea was to continue lowering the threshold. But I think for now it stopped, so we can maybe reopen this topic again and lower this barrier again, making 2 phases, right? So recommend by email, chase the gem owners, and then enforce at some point, because I think the goal is really similar, right? So really make it maybe for everyone in the future.
There's the infrastructure set up for it, right? Like we have the mailers in the source code that can be repurposed to send another round. The thing that sort of I think made us hesitant in the past, and I think this is true of PyPI as well, is the support. First of all, the blowback from the usual tinfoil hat brigade, and the other part being the support burden of dealing with folks who've lost the device. And we talked about that last year in the context of setting up a shared help desk, but unfortunately that sort of foundered at the TAC stage, as being seen as an incomplete proposal.
In my experience, right, the more 2FA solutions you offer, right, that are cross compatible, the less likelihood of a lockout you have. You just have to encourage people to, here, give us your you know, give us multiple ways to 2FA verify you. And I'm thinking like, you know, my immediate brain was like, here, give us your phone number and this and that. And I'm like, great. Phone numbers are still not the greatest way of doing 2FA. I mean, it works, but like only if you're using a VoIP system like Google Voice.
Plus, it leaves you in the sights of GDPR, which is for a small repo not worth it. Yeah, so I in the documentation when we rolled out WebAuthn for Ruby Gems, the documentation is quite adamant that you should have set up at least 2 different devices to guarantee that you still have access if one gets lost.
That makes a lot of sense.
Whether people will do that, you know, it's documentation. Does it even get read?
Right. I would like to propose for the tail end of this meeting, if we don't have any other topics, which is fine, that I co-opt this meeting to turn it into a small like group of us chewing on creating a potential initial template for the AO proposal. I don't know if people want to do that or not, but I've got the rest of this meeting set aside, so I can chew on it if I can. I'm trying to get my computer booted up.
I will respectfully decline. I'm anxious to get on with the rest of my day since it's my last. I want to make sure that I've squared away everything, got all the Slack logins switched over and so forth.
Yes.
So I might take the opportunity to duck away.
I respect that. If anybody else wants to hang out with me, I would appreciate the brain share of this whole thing. But yeah, I totally respect where you're coming from, Jacques. I'm sorry again.
No. It's nothing personal. I'm not too like. I mean, I'm phased, obviously, but I'm not too phased. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Robots. All right, folks. It's been real. I don't know if I will be in Vancouver next week. We will see.
Have the flights already been booked?
The flight's been paid for. The hotel's been paid for. I need to find out.
If that's getting rolled back.
Yeah, I don't know whether they're going to roll that back or whether they're like, whatever. If it is, then I guess, oh shit, I need to get the presentation off my work machine. Or upload it at least so I can get a hand on it. So yeah, there's a little bit of homework to do today.
Oh Lord.
Job hunting in Vancouver. Yeah, why not? It's a nice city.
Does the family want to move?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, you might as well move to Seattle at that point. All right, folks. I will see you all on the other side.
Perfect.
See you later. Bye.
All right.
Good luck.
I'm gonna hang out.
Good luck, Doc.
Anyway, so I'm gonna look through and try to track down the template that I got sent from Alpha Omega on the topic of let's see, there should be a template somewhere for proposals. Template. I don't see the. Okay, let's see if I get the alpha. Let me just look it up on the OpenSSF website. Has anybody else tracked down, or Randall, do you know where the Alpha Omega funding requests template is? Have you seen that anywhere?
I have seen it. Where did I see it? It's in Google Drive. I think it's in the. Isn't it in the Google Drive, like the OpenSSF Google Drive? I know they have a copy of it for sure.
Oh, where is the OpenSSF Google Drive?
And whether or not it what do you call official? That's the other thing too, because I'm not too sure.
I don't need something official. I just need these are generally the questions they're going to ask us.
You know, for someone who works here, I should have this answer, but I don't. I know the irony. Hang on. Oh, found it. Great. Got it. All right, cool. Oh,
Win.
yeah. Copy link. All right, we got this. We can chew on it. All right, cool. Oh, great, awesome. Okay. All right, I'm gonna screen share this, and then I will send a link. Let's see. I'm gonna create a new document.
Can you zoom in?
Yeah, give me a second. Docs.new. Excuse me. Open XSF repository working group. Okay, I'm gonna send this, share this, restricted. I'm gonna start out with anybody who has the link can be an editor. For right now, I'll probably restrict it to suggest at a certain point, but for right now, when we're all jamming on a document. Okay. If you all can use signed in Google accounts, that's better because then we can see who's made the contribution. But if that's not possible, I totally respect that. Mission of Alpha Omega is protect society by improving critical eligible projects include standalone projects, foundations that cover many OpenSSF projects, core ecosystem services. The selection is informed by the work of the OpenSSF critical security. Okay. Okay, grant proposal. First, it should describe the project's current state. Assume we know very little about the project, how is the project critical, and what. Okay, this is somewhat targeted at going after or performing an audit of an open source project. We'll need to add some stuff that clarifies this for this use case. Besides this, 30 fixes currently on vulnerabilities in the supply chain. That's a high level, right? Achieve these outcomes. All right, and these are just like bullet points. Hiring. Oh, Randall, does it still need to be zoomed in, or are you able to just view this?
I'm looking at it on my Google app
Perfect.
thing.
What's the desired grant amount? I have no idea. One shot. Engagement duration. I think so. I had another document that I created somewhere else. Okay, let me root around real fast because I think I started another document on this topic, and I need to see if I can find it. Oh, here it is. Funding proposal. Okay. The scope that I asked about is all right. So the scope that I was considering including is pen testing the infrastructure, pen testing the artifact build servers, and then also potentially Second describe the outcome I expect the grant to lead to. So I thought so three things that I was thinking about doing in this sort of work. Having someone pen test the infrastructure, right? Like the repository host. Somebody pen testing the build artifact build and upload tooling, right? Like for Gradle, it's Gradle, for NPM, it's the NPM CLI, you know, all those things. And then the third one was definitely going to be contentious and definitely going to be harder to pull off is red team engagements against the infrastructure and maintainers. So those are like actual attacker sort of scenarios where we're hiring a firm to simulate like a determined attacker with the intention of trying to compromise the artifact servers. Yes, Randall.
As a community man or as a community member, I can tell you, and as someone that's gathered feedback in the past, I wonder if using the word pen test is the best word, because some people might have direct objections to that. And I wonder if you've considered maybe just saying that we're auditing, or maybe in-depth audit might be a little bit more or an easier pill to swallow. Just saying.
Sure. I mean, I don't know what the correct. I mean, pen test is a pretty understood term in the security industry around. I don't know what the nomenclature that's so security audit. I mean, so there's two different things, right? There is clear box testing, which is, but that's only if you can get access to the source code. There is like, I don't know what the other term is, like black box testing, or like, let's say we're going at, like, you're going to go after an artifact server, and the organization that we're going to be auditing does offer source code, or sorry, doesn't make the source code of the artifact server public, but they do they don't make the artifact server code public, but they do have a vulnerability disclosure policy that allows you to perform an audit, right? So you can't get access to the source code, but they say, here, go ahead and hack us and tell us about it.
Right.
And in either of those cases, right? In either of those cases, my brain.
It's going around.
I know. I started woke up this morning with a headache. Not as bad as Jacques, but as you know. Yeah. Either of those cases. Here's the assumption that I have. I have the assumption that some of this work will be, in my experience, right? In my experience, having worked for a repository host, because the repository infrastructure is not being paid for, there's never a requirement to do these audits, right? So even the effort involved, like I have worked for, having worked for a potential company that is hosting some of this stuff, it's not a priority for them to invest the energy or time in trying to get an audit done, even if it was given to them for free and they didn't have to pay for it, right? Like, that's just not on their radar as something that's important necessarily. So even trying to engage with them saying, hey, we're willing to give you this for free, they still have to dedicate engineering hours to, one, guaranteeing that they're going to get and handle the reports and receive and actually do something with them, versus if taking this hypothetical artifact server organization that may or may not have a vulnerability disclosure policy that was published, you can because that organization has a VDP that explicitly spells out that like safe harbor is offered if you're performing an audit within this scope. You could potentially engage a company to perform an audit against that scope without the organization necessarily needing to be involved with the approval process.
Fair, I'm following.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That being said, I also did an audit. I did a bit of research a while ago into artifact servers and who has what the policies are that each of them have. Let me see if I can dig this up. 1 second. I'm gonna look for spreadsheets. Corporate resolution of dependencies. By me. Here we go. I also did this bit of work here. So this is a listing of all of the different artifact servers in the industry and whether or not they have a safe harbor policy associated with their associated with their like vulnerability reporting process. So currently there are only 2 organizations that we could most likely hire a firm to go after an audit without needing them to be involved, right? GitHub and Gradle. The other ones don't have safe harbor policies.
Okay.
So we either need to convince them to add safe harbor policies and then then get out of the way so that we can have a firm come in and do the audit. Or every single other organization in this, we would need to go and say, hey, we want to perform an audit. You need to either publish a safe harbor policy, or we need to set up an existing agreement between us or you and whichever firm we hire, spelling out that this is allowed behavior.
I would suggest that, like, do we know for a fact that, for example, they have no safe harbor policy because they don't have staff, or do we have a reason why they have no safe harbor policy?
I would presume that it has mostly to do with awareness of the concept of safe harbor policy, or like, I mean, let me go because Python, right? Python security policy, reporting issues to CPython, whatever. It doesn't state anywhere, right?
Because let me say this, Jonathan. I recently had a conversation with one of the kernel developers that works with the LF education side, and we were talking about how, like, what is OpenSSF, and in his opinion, and like the general et al. Community opinion, where OpenSSF stands. And what he was saying is that there's a lot of opinions, and kind of a common opinion is that for some reason we overreach. I can't seem to get anyone to explain to me how we overreach, because that's come up before at Homebrew, Kernel, Gentoo, etc. But I just think that it's something we need to be sensitive about, because if that's our image, then I feel like we have to like try to not be so abrasive, because I feel like people think we're a lot more abrasive than we really are, if that makes sense. So that's where I'm coming from with a lot of this, because a lot of people, like, for example, the kernel guy went on to explain to me that OpenSSF doesn't understand that there have been multiple generations of security, and security has been addressed in different ways at different points in time when certain things are recommended, and we are tone deaf to that. That was one of the opinions that came up. So that's why I think that a lot of what we should do is not be like, hey, let's do this. I think that to a certain point, it's a matter of also understanding, because I think they know they have to do this, but I don't think that, especially in the open source world, Nobody wants anything forced upon them.
Right, but let's take, okay, so of these artifact servers that I've got going here, right, that I've
Mhm.
listed, this is owned by a company. This is owned by a company. This is owned by a company. This is open source. This is open source. This is owned by a company. This is open source, open source, open source. I don't know about, actually, I don't know about Golang, Drupal, Etire, but like at least half of these are owned by companies,
Agreed.
right?
But I think I just think the way that we should approach it is, so I think at this point everyone can agree that Safe Harbor is kind of a best practice that is pretty much industry standard. So why don't you have one? Is it because you don't want one? You don't want to have the liability? Are there legal reasons? Or is it a matter that you actually need help writing one? If you get
Right.
where I'm coming from.
Right, and that's a conversation that's currently going on. I mean, one of the things that David Wheeler is working on is hopefully a safe harbor policy that LF Legal will sign off on. That, I mean, David Wheeler's goal is to write one that is a model one that anybody else could apply, and
Right.
maybe that's part of this initiative, is that we can then go
Like a reference architecture or something.
yeah, we can. I mean, disclose.io is supposed to be that.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. But so if we can come up with something that yeah, if we can come up with something that fits all of these boxes or checks all these boxes, and we can give it to some of these organizations and say, hey, here's some safe harbor language you can use, I think the other problem is that, like, having safe harbor language also somewhat predicates you on needing to have legal, like, provide you advice, and most of these organizations that are smaller don't have lawyers on staff or in their circles that they could tap into to provide those insights.
Well, I think to a certain level, and correct me if I'm wrong, isn't safe harbor when you say we're gonna like respond in X amount of time?
No, safe harbor at a high level is if you try to find vulnerabilities in our system and you're doing so under the pretenses of research, and you disclose the vulnerabilities to us, we waive our terms of service, we waive like all of that stuff, so that you're not in violation of terms of service, you're not in violations of all that stuff. And then that, because you waived all that stuff, there's no risk, or there's significantly reduced risk of the federal government coming after you for a violation of CFAA or whatever the equivalent government laws are in your country.
Fair.
Right. That's that, because I mean, so within the past year, I think it was announced at ShmooCon 2022, the federal government in the United States stated that they would not pursue CFAA cases against what they determined to be good faith security research. So that was a big win for us, but the laws in the United States are not the law of the internet. The internet is governed by a lot of laws.
And wouldn't that be somewhat of a vague kind of thing?
It's potentially dependent upon whoever's in office.
Correct.
Yes, which it's actually surprising that came out during I think that was 2022 was Trump still, right? No, that was Biden. I don't know.
Was it Biden?
When was
No, 2022 was Biden. Yeah.
All right, so yay, progress.
So yeah.
But
so then that would change from region to region, correct?
Yeah.
Would it also change via industry? Like, is there industry safe harbor requirements that certain industries need to follow? Like, say, healthcare in the United States?
No, but there is CISA has an initiative out where they're trying to force all government entities to have disclosure policies that also include safe harbor. So that is not going to help us with the repository host, but it will help us with it does help with government.
Fair.
I don't know what the current state of the CISA does. CISA published a, like, here you work for the or you are a government entity, use this disclosure policy, copy and paste it if you don't want to spend the time doing your own. But that document was intended for the use by government agencies.
Fair.
Yeah. But I think CISA also mandated that all of these, any like government agencies had to have a disclosure channel. Like they had to announce one.
Got it.
So
So if you're in the UK though, would that be this, like, would you also be saying the same thing though? Like, we're like allowing you to do this? Is the wording the same, or would the wording change? That's my question.
this is the one that I'm working on with, I don't think I have anything sensitive in here. I've been working on this one with David Wheeler. Okay. So this is the disclose.io one, right? So when conducting vulnerability research according to this policy, we consider the research to be conducted under this policy to be authorized concerning any applicable anti-hacking laws, and we will not initiate or support legal action against you for accidental good faith violations of this policy. So that's a waiver from CFAA. Authorized concerning any relevant anti-circumvention laws, and we will not bring a claim against you for circumventing of technology controls. That waives you from DMCA, because DMCA is also used to go after hackers and security researchers, because often when you're doing research, it requires reverse engineering, and reverse engineering may also involve deobfuscation, and deobfuscation has also been tried and found to be led to potential violations of DMCA. Exempt from restrictions in our terms of service and or acceptable use policy that would interfere with conducting research, and we waive those restrictions on a limited basis, and lawful, helpful to the overall security of the internet and conducted in good faith. Yada 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 yada. And then there's also the third-party safe harbor, which is if you submit a report in accordance with this policy, which affects a third-party service, you may be required or have an obligation to share certain information with the affected third party. Yada yada yada. Except for as required by law, we shall not share your identifying information with any affected third party without notifying you. This is to prevent you disclosing to us, and then we have to tell someone else, and that resulting in you getting legal blowback because we had to share the details with someone else and your name getting associated with it.
The way I understand that is, I'm a cloud provider. If you hack anybody, you're basically going to hack me. And if you hack me, I'm going to tell my client that you hacked me. Is that not kind of what it is?
Not really. It's more like you hack me, but that system you went after, actually, I don't know, but you didn't know that. And I need to tell the downstream vendor that there's a vulnerability in the downstream thing. You won't include identifying information of the original reporter in that, so that the downstream vendor can't go after legally the upstream one because they don't know who it is.
Fair.
Right.
Although I wonder, because the way it's written is very much like Microsoft trying to like limit their liability here.
No, they're trying to limit their liability by saying we're only going to tell the person we're going to only give them their name if we are compelled to by law, which may happen in like, you know, judges can force and compel Microsoft to do anything, right? So they might have to cough up this information tragically and then get it to public record.
Right. Fair.
But they're also stating out here, please note we cannot authorize out of scope testing in the name of third parties, and such testing is beyond the scope of this policy. So they're basically saying, like, we may have to disclose on your behalf to a downstream, but this is not considered, like, we are not authorizing you to go after third parties and using our policy as something that you said, oh, well, Microsoft let me do it.
Correct. So you can't go and hack Visa because they're hosted on Microsoft and Microsoft.
Correct. Yeah. Yes. That being said, there in my digging, and I don't remember, I haven't done a bunch of this, but in my experience, Amazon, I think, has some blanket policy, and I'm presuming Microsoft does too, that like So there's this whole problem having to do with scope, right? Because let's take a cloud service provider, which is the exact example you provided, right? I'm paying for that AWS service, right? I'm running
Right.
something on that.
Right.
I authorize you to test it, but you accidentally find a vulnerability in Amazon's infrastructure,
Correct.
right? I have authorized you to find something in my infrastructure, but you have gone outside the scope of that. And so I think that Microsoft and Google and Amazon have all released and said, you know, you can provide scope permissions up the chain of your supply chain, and you don't need to engage with us in that work.
Right.
Right. And that's like,
This applies more to people that are like tinkering, like those people that are trying to find like where they messed up setting up the cloud. Like the one guy that found that if you change one number in the Google Cloud panel, you could pull up other people's accounts and do whatever you want with it.
kind of, I mean, that at that point, I think they were actually going after Microsoft directly. And so in that case, Microsoft's disclosure policy applies and safe harbor.
Well, I do remember them disclosing it because they sent out an email going, yeah, we had this issue. No one was affected, but we had this issue.
Right. Yes. How do you say your name? Avishai?
Yep.
Did I get that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. You're just nodding along, which I appreciate. You seem to be following this. Do you have any comments or
No,
questions?
I'm just I'm not too familiar with the topic, so I'm just enjoying
Fly on the
watching
wall.
work. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's
I did find the same for Nougat.
yes. Oh, did you? Let me find. So this. You want to send the link for Nougat?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So actually, I think that I did.
You're also missing cargo.
I probably what ecosystem is cargo?
Rust.
Rust.
Okay.
So here it just says that Microsoft is
Who runs cargo?
abides by the safe harbor.
I think Rust Foundation, but I'll find out here in a second.
Cargo Vroom.
Mozilla maybe.
Oh, that would
It's
make
possible.
If it's Mozilla, then Mozilla's policy applies. Mozilla has one of the first vulnerability disclosure policies ever. They
Really?
wrote one of the first ever. Yes, theirs is one of the earliest incoming vulnerability disclosure policies. I don't know if you guys have been involved at all in the outgoing disclosure policy that I've worked with on the for the vulnerability disclosure working group. Did either of you see that work?
I've seen it, but haven't been involved in it.
Oh,
Yeah.
So Randall, you actually might find this useful for some of the work that you're doing. I don't know. You've got a larger team of people around you than I. So the TAC voted on Tuesday to ratify a proposed disclosure policy that I authored with the open source security vulnerability disclosure working group. That is, I saw it.
Yeah, it's good work.
This one. So this one is the model outbound vulnerability disclosure policy. And this now, because it's been ratified by the TAC, is if any working group wants to use this as their disclosure policy for outgoing reports. I mean, it applies to any work coming out of the Open Source Security Foundation. Ultimately, the person who's doing the work to find the vulnerability can choose if they're like, I'm going to represent me, I'm going to represent my company, I'm going to represent the OpenSF, right? But if you want to represent the OpenSF in that work, you can use this disclosure policy.
Very nice.
Yes. And then also any research organization can adopt this policy as their own.
I want to say that Rust or Cargo is a Rust Foundation. And I sent you their disclosure policy because it's different.
Okay.
They have a 5-step disclosure policy.
That's but it doesn't say it doesn't state their
That's why I said it was kind of weird, but that's what they have in their. When you go to security, when you click on security in Cargo's website, which is Crates, that's where they take you.
So I should also start including emails. So the thing that we can also potentially draft up is just an email to get us a starting point, right? To state, hey, we want to engage in this. We want to engage in potentially auditing your security, but we need you to have a safe harbor policy for us to do that. And so if we can come up with an email that communicates that, it might be a good starting point. So Cargo is not owned by a company.
But you want to know something? So this is what I get from the community. A lot of people have security teams, and like there's a difference between, hey, let us help you do this, and hey, let us help your security team get the ability so that they can do more things, which is, I think, what you got to walk. All I'm saying, John, is that you got to walk that line.
So yes, there is
because like at Gentoo, for example, you'll run into people that are very security opinionated. And I'm not going to say they're wrong, but they come from different generations of security. And yeah, like realize that Gentoo does not have an installer. So these are the people you talk to in that community. And there's other communities, because I imagine that like NPM has a security team. I'm sure that Cargo has a security team. And I think that we need to make sure that we're not saying, hey, your security team isn't doing their job or anything that implies that. So let us do their job, because some people will take that the wrong way is all I'm saying.
Okay. Let me assert something a little different. I assert, I believe that in the industry we have two types of artifact servers. We have artifact servers that do have SOCs, that like the company has a SOC of some kind, and those that do not, right? GitHub is owned by Microsoft. GitHub probably has a SOC. Microsoft has a SOC, right? If they have a security incident that impacts their NPM, they can respond with their SOC, right? Perform an audit, do the in-depth stuff. The rest of them,
I'm not sure that MSRC, our SOC, covers NPM. I'm pretty sure they would cover NuGet, but I'll have to ask if they also cover NPM as well.
Do you actually? So yeah. Sorry, are you?
I work at Microsoft.
Oh, cool. I would be very curious. Well, so NuGet is what? .NET.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then did you send me a link to the
I did. I'm not sure it's the one we are looking for. It's more about privacy.
Yeah, it's also 2013. I would presume that's not.
And let me also say something else, Jonathan. I would not put Homebrew in here, because there's a big difference between like package managers for language ecosystems and what like we've been calling end user packaging systems, because the expectations of the users are drastically different. Like in Homebrew, people will download stuff, and then when they like have adverse effect for whatever reason, because somebody packaged something they shouldn't have packaged in their software, then they'll come back to Homebrew and be like, but why do you guys host it? So that's why Homebrew does not take any editorial approach to like what they upload, or they try not to. However, if a package is unsafe, they will delete it, but it's more of a community decision. It's not like, but yeah, like long story short, Homebrew has this thing where like, because the end user expectation is that everything works and everything is relatively safe, Homebrew defends itself with their ideology of Homebrew is the last line of defense and should not be relied on for security. And if you rely on it for security, then you're just doing it wrong. Is
No,
position.
that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Obviously, can you-
Which I don't entirely agree with.
I
But
know.
as you know, there's a whole history there. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure that
Right. Avishay, can you do some digging and see if you can find out so is Nougat hosted by Microsoft?
Yes. Yeah. So I already pinged the PM for Nougat and also Zach from GitHub/npm to ask if MSRC are covering them.
Can you here's the link to this document too. If you could, when you get a response, you could ping me back and let me
Sure.
know. I'd love to update this document with that information. And also,
Sure.
if
But I have
they
to drop now for another call for the source control management.
right, if you also when you get an answer, if you could, so I found the Nougat contact page.
Yeah.
If you can try to convince the Nougat PM to add the security contact to that contact page, that would be
Sure.
valuable as well.
Sure.
Or, and if even it's like Microsoft's policy applies, that actually really helps because it means that I can just use Microsoft as the disclosure perspective for that. Right.
Mhm.
All right, cool. This has been very helpful. Let's continue to chew on this. I don't have a lot of time this week, and this might take this might bump out 2 weeks, but I want to work on this and I want to try to get something together in this initiative. So I appreciate you guys' help. I like.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I would really appreciate the assistance because I only have so much time in a day, and I know we all do. So,
Absolutely, Jonathan.
all right, thanks all. Have a
Great.
wonderful rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.